Do you have any stories of where you've seen some bad behavior make a noticeable difference in the outcome of a case?
If I see the other side doing something like that, I actually try to use that.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We have with us attorney Robert Keenan. Rob is a partner with us at Sterling Law Offices and an expert on all things family law. Thank you so much for being with us today, Rob.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So today we're going to keep things on a very practical subject matter as opposed to going into the ins and outs of litigation like you and I have in the past on these episodes. Today I want to talk about something fundamental that I think a lot of our clients don't spend much time thinking about, but is wildly important in our family law cases, which is courtroom etiquette. So, being in a courtroom, I mean, for you and I, that's become fairly standard. But for most people, most of our clients and the parties involved in a divorce action, it's not something they're doing on a routine basis. So, it can be nerve wracking and intimidating. So, being prepared and them knowing what to expect can really help alleviate stress and, more importantly, make a positive impact on the judge or court commissioner that they're in front of. So, we've all heard this, right? Like in criminal law, we've heard that it is generally bad people acting their best in court. And in family law, we hear these are good people acting their worst. So, what kind of preparation do you do with clients before going into a hearing?
Sure. So obviously there's two types of preparation I do for them. One is the substantive preparation of like what the outcome could potentially be for whatever hearing we're at. So we talk about potential scenarios, but then also we have the more practical expectation and preparation, which is, hey, you're going into a courtroom. There's going to be either a judge or a court commissioner. The other party's going to be there. They may not have a great relationship, so it could feel tense there. I tell them to, dress to impress, right? Keep nice pants, if you can, a collared shirt, no hats, no open-toed shoes, and really just to treat it as if you're there to observe a job interview or something, in the sense that you're not speaking. I'm there to speak for you. It's what you brought me on to do, and just to come with a real calm demeanor. I tell people, try not to be memorable is essentially what it is, right? Come in, sit down. Don't be somebody that the court's really going to remember how you acted, whether positively or negatively. Just be very stoic is what I like to tell my clients.
Okay. And so, do you say that they should, if they have a feeling that they should express it, like that they should be heard? I mean, tell me more about in terms of verbalizing things, who's in charge?
Sure. So, as the lawyer there, I'm there to speak for them. And clients often ask me, am I going to have to talk? Am I going to have to say anything? And I tell them, no, you're not going to have to speak or talk. The only time in which you might have to say something is if there is a question that is asked of me that maybe I don't know off directly. And so I have to I'll ask you. Or if the court does address you specifically, in which case, I would tell people, just answer the question directly. If they ask you a specific, hey, do you reside at this address? You say, yeah, that's where I'm staying right now. You don't need to go into the whys or whatnot. It's just keep it very simple. Address any question that they ask of you. But for the most part, I'm going to be the one speaking. So I will ask you to stay silent, both in voice and in expression, right? A lot of times people, they may not like what's being said, or they think the other person is lying, and so they wear that on their face. They might like shake their head or gasp or roll their eyes. Courts see that. Commissioners see that. Don't do that, right? Just sit there, stay stoic. If you know that the other side is saying something untrue, you can politely kind of tap me on the shoulder. Hey, that's not accurate. This is actually the accuracy of it. And then I can address it when it's my turn to speak. And when I say my turn, we do go back and forth. This isn't an argument. We're not shouting over each other. There is a specific decorum we have. There's a specific way in which we speak and how we address the court, and we want to make sure we follow that.
Absolutely. I think that's like such an important tidbit that you just shared, which is these nonverbal cues that clients tend to give, courts hate it. They don't want to see eye rolling. They don't want to see people throwing their hands up in the air. They don't want to say like, oh, like those verbal like exasperations. It drives judges and commissioners nuts. And exactly as you said, it's like we get our turn. We will have the opportunity to speak to and respond to whatever they just said. So we have our chance to make our statements, and doing so in a thoughtful, professional way is going to have a much bigger, better impact on that judge or commissioner than interrupting, outbursting, being emotional is going to have, which is really just going to turn off that judge or commissioner, and potentially even work against, our client if they get annoyed. If the judges or commissioners get annoyed, it's not a good place to be. So that's great. Have you ever seen firsthand, in a court, do you have any stories of where you've seen some bad behavior make a noticeable difference in the outcome of a case?
Absolutely. And a lot of times it's just simple interruptions or outbursts. I will make a statement about the opposing party, and they'll jump in. That's not true. That's a lie, or that never happened, and he's fabricating, and or they go roll their eyes, like as you just described. And as you indicated, that's not helping them at all. It doesn't prove their point at all. In fact, a lot of times, if I see the other side doing something like that, I actually try to use that to my advantage. For example, if I am arguing that there is allegations of verbal abuse and aggression against my client by the other side, and the other side does an outburst, I can say, here's an example of it. Even in the courtroom setting in front of a judge, he or she is still exerting these outbursts, and it kind of helps support my position. So a lot of times we even try to use that to our advantage in some senses. So, but yeah, we do see it. It's a lot of times it's more so with the litigants who don't have lawyers, because again, all lawyers tell their client, "Don't say anything, sit there. I will do the talking." But when there are litigants who don't have lawyers, that's when we definitely see the interruptions, the outbursts, and I kind of actually chuckle a little bit when it starts happening, because I know it's likely going to help my case. It's going to be better for me, because courts, the judges stop focusing so much on what's being said, and they start looking at the parties and how they're acting. And judges and commissioners are people, right? And so if they don't like you, if they're not liking how you're acting in their room, that could very well bleed into a decision they make. So it's important to keep that in mind. Hey, keep your composure, stay polite, stay cordial, be unremarkable, essentially. Because if you are loud and boisterous and interrupting, you could rub a judge the wrong way, and they might make a decision based on the fact of how you're acting in court. I've definitely seen that numerous times.
Yeah, I mean, one non-family court case comes to mind that maybe a lot of our listeners are familiar with, was a pretty high-profile criminal case in Waukesha where, it was making the nightly news that Judge Doro was literally muting him, and at times removed him from the courtroom altogether, the defendant, because he wouldn't stop interrupting, and he was being aggressive, and he was disrupting the trial. And so he, as the defendant himself, was removed from the process. So absolutely what you're saying is correct. It's like these judges want decorum. They want professionalism, whether you're a lawyer or a party, they expect it of you. So I've seen it. You've seen it. It's an absolute truth. Okay. We, since COVID, have been living in a bit of a different world when it comes to family law practice and procedure, namely with the introduction of Zoom court appearances. I mean, for the first 14 years of my practice, that wasn't a thing. And now, since 2020, we are, I don't know, about 50-50 on, are we actually in a courtroom physically now, or are we joining by Zoom video conference? So, do you have specific instructions, or what do you tell your clients when your hearing is by Zoom instead of in person?
Right. So Zoom is great, but also can be your worst enemy because when you aren't there directly with your client, it can be hard for you to then control them as well, right? If they're sitting right next to me, I can put my hand on their shoulder if I feel like they're getting a bit emotional or they want to outburst or they're showing expressions. If they're on Zoom, I can't do that, right? I can't go and mute them if I'm not the one hosting the meeting. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into getting ready for that hearing where I tell them, look, do not talk, put your camera on, but put the microphone on mute. I'm going to be the one talking. If they address you or if I address you, that's the only time when you would unmute yourself. So that is a challenge of itself, just losing that direct contact with your client to kind of help keep them in line, right? Is one. The other is obviously just the appearance that people have on Zoom. For some reason, many people just don't think they have to look appropriate when on Zoom. They might be in pajamas or they might be sitting in their bed or maybe they're driving their car. These are all things that are not good. The courts are not really okay with that. We also understand that sometimes people do have lives. And if you have a hearing in the middle of the day, you might have to take it from your car, but the court would expect you to have your car off, you're parked, the camera's in front, you're not moving it around, you're stationary, and you're listening to what has to be said. I think a funny example that also kind of made its way around the national news was an individual who had a court hearing for a suspended license, and he joins his Zoom hearing while he's driving. Right, so the court's like, "Aren't we here for your suspended license?" And I'm sitting here seeing you drive in a car, and so that obviously had a funny outcome there. But so treat it as if you are in the room, in the courtroom. Again, the camera's usually waist high, so at least have a nice shirt on or something, so the court sees that, and be in a setting to where it's appropriate, right? Have a normal background, not a background that has your bed in it or your kids behind you running around. And the other big one too is be stationary. Don't be on your phone walking around, doing the dishes, doing yard work. Treat it with respect. Be there and give the court the attention that it deserves.
Absolutely. Love that. That's great advice. So, last summary statement for our listeners, if you have any last pointers or bits of advice with regard to decorum in a courtroom. Any final comments?
Trust the lawyer that you hired, right? That's why you hired them. You hired them to be the advocate, to be your voice, um, and to take their guidance and do as they ask you to do, especially when it comes to your composure. Remember that you are going to be in front of people, judges or commissioners, who are going to be making decisions, major decisions involving your life. Okay. And so you want them to, in some sense, remember you in a positive way. You don't want their lasting memory of you to be, oh, yeah, that's the person who had an absolute outburst in court, who made a huge scene, who constantly interrupted me. That's not going to go well for your case because, as I said, these courtrooms are comprised of people, and people formulate opinions, whether they know it or not, on cases, and those opinions can bleed into the decisions that they make, and these decisions are going to be big ones. So be there with the intention of impressing, of showing maturity and professionalism, and trust in the lawyer that you have to do the job that you hire them to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. It's important for our clients to remember, like, this isn't just a one and done. Usually we will often be in front of that judge, in front of that commissioner again. And as you said early on, it's like, don't be memorable for the wrong reasons. Like, you don't want them to see you and be like, oh, right, that's the one that had that massive outburst and then they have a bad taste in their mouth. So behave yourself, right? This has all been very helpful. I think sometimes thinking on these more basic practical matters within family court is so very helpful because we overlook it. So, takeaways, it's super important. Like, treat the courtroom with the respect it deserves. Take it seriously. Respect the judge. Dress appropriately. Listen to your attorney, and make sure that you understand that that hearing is incredibly important to the ultimate outcome of your case. So treat every single one of those hearings with white gloves and be very conscious and conscientious. So I appreciate all of the information, Rob, as always. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Good courtroom behavior can save your case, but bad behavior from your spouse might actually help you win. When emotions run high and people can't control themselves in front of a judge, smart attorneys know exactly how to use those outbursts to their advantage. So see how litigation strategy really works in our next video.